Hi there, Sam Sorbo here for the Sam Sorbo Show. I have an online community called Underground Education where a number of homeschoolers have gathered. Some are brand new, some are longtime homeschoolers. And we just get together and chat. And I hosted an Underground Education Playbook for Home Learning Conference question and answer session. So I had a lot of community members just bring me their questions about the Playbook for Home Learning Conference. And we had a very interesting conversation about education. I hope you enjoy it. You've heard me talk about Mike Lindell, who I adore. You know, he's the inventor of My Pillow, and how that pillow has given me a good night's sleep that I need. In fact, I never knew how good I could sleep before I had My Pillow. Mike continues to roll out new offers on his products, and the latest one is on his towel sets. Towels aren't something you think about often. I never knew what I was missing until I tried the towels just last year. Now, you have all helped build My Pillow into the incredible company that it is today, and you've trusted Mike Lindell to give you a great night's sleep. Mike's now changing the game with his 6-piece towel set. The set's made with USA cotton, making it extremely absorbent, and yet still providing that soft feel you look for in a towel. The set comes with 2 bath, 2 hand towels, and 2 washcloths, typically retailing for $109.99. But for a limited time, you can get this set for the low price of $39.99. And that's using promo code Sam Sorbo. So remember, all My Pillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. You just go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener specials to get this insanely low price of $39.99 on the towel set. You'll find deep discounts on other My Pillow products as well. So enter promo code Sam Sorbo, or you can call 800-625-5983. That's 800-625-5983 for these great radio specials. Hello, everyone.
Oh,
I'm just getting everything organized. I see Dawn, Dr. Dawn, Homer. Good to see you. Chicky, you're there.
Yeah, why don't you
texting
make me a co-host, Sam, just in case we need anything for me to support you?
You want me to make you a co-host?
Yeah, just in case.
How the heck do I do that?
Click on my image.
Make host? I don't think there's co-host. I can make you a host, I suppose.
Usually there's co-host. I don't want you to give up host. We'll wing it. I'll help you as I can.
Yeah, it just says make host.
No worries.
Okay. Well, great. Well, hello, everyone. It's lovely to see everybody here. And I'm so excited. The playbook is coming together very nicely. I mean, the conference and everything. So I thought this would be fun today to just answer any questions anybody had.
well, I'll jump in if no one else is. The playbook I've read about, I've heard about, and I know nothing about. So,
Oh, that's not a good sign. Read about it, Andy's heard about it, and he still knows nothing. Okay, so the playbook is a guide because so we are at a point in our history where we've reached a climactic moment where we're understanding that what the so-called educators in our school system are embarked on doing is actually not education. We finally reached this point where we're admitting to ourselves that they're preoccupied with things that are other than education. And in fact, those things are detrimental to our kids. And I'm talking about critical race theory, the 1619 Project, a lot of the doctrine that's coming out in the schools, not to mention the sex ed, comprehensive sex ed, and all the gender theory stuff. And so exposing young children, for instance, to this sexuality is inappropriate. And for centuries, we've deemed that children are a special class, that they shouldn't be exposed to certain things. One of them being questions about sexuality. And yet here we are, not only exposing them to that, but in a sense, overexposing them, if you will, and causing them to question for themselves, which is just completely inappropriate. And so everybody's gotten to this point where we're saying, okay, so that's wrong, but how am I supposed to get education done then for my kids? And the fact is that it's so wrong, and it has grown out of what previously came before it, which also was wrong. And we haven't surmounted that obstacle of admitting that where we were before was also wrong, because it's very difficult for us to see, because we were steeped in it. So the parents now are saying, well, that's definitely wrong, but they're not understanding that what they were raised with was also not entirely correct. I'm just admitting other people as we go. And so the playbook it's a guide, in a sense, of all of this stuff. It's laid out fairly clearly, with space to take notes from the talks that we'll have, to cement for the parent that what they are doing is not only good, it's excellent, it's beyond good, it's an improvement on what was on offer, not just for education now, but actually what was on offer to them when they were going to school. That's the big difference. Is school teaches 3 basic lessons that are all anti-education. School teaches don't ask, don't try, don't think. Those are 3 fundamental lessons that you learn in school. And we all went through it, and we all actually learned those lessons. And that's why today we have what we have with COVID. Nobody questioned this directive to simply trust the experts. Just put your faith in the experts, don't ask questions, do what you're told, sit and be quiet, put the mask on your face. And all of these things are actually this behavior is gleaned from the systematic, quote unquote, the schooling that we all got. So in order to then take on the education of your children, you also need to be, in a sense, freed from those shackles. And that's what the playbook tries to codify for the parents, because what happens, and it happened to me when I started home educating, the only reason I started to home educate my kids is because the public school was doing such an abysmal job, and they were the good school, because we moved to that community for the good school. And so I pulled my kids out thinking, well, even if I fail, I'll do better than that. And so we'll get it figured out. But then a year in, or a year and a half in, I was like, man, I'm not doing a good job. Why did I think that? Because I was taught to think that I was incapable in school. That's what school teaches us to think about ourselves, is that we are infinitely incapable and just barely teachable on a few things that either they pick for us or we pick for us. The opposite is the truth. That's why education is so far off the rails now, because they've been doing the opposite of educating for so long. This is a very logical culmination, is that they're just completely steeped now in this, absurdity that they're calling, education, which it's not. So in order to free parents from that very limiting thinking, I've started saying that the one competency that our education system has is in convincing us that we are incapable. That's this one competency. So the playbook is to try to get people to understand, no, they're better than competent. they're actually uniquely designed for this purpose in a sense.
Yeah.
And so that's what the whole conference is about. And the playbook is making sure that they have something tangible to take home with them to remind them what happened, because nobody taught us how to take notes in school. Nobody taught us how to then go from that day of school and synthesize what we learned. In fact, I just watched a documentary and the teacher said, there's no good that comes from doing homework unless it's actually work that is the culmination of what the student studied that day, which I thought was really an interesting point of view. And that's from a teacher. But most of us didn't really learn how to take notes. Not that we don't take notes, but we don't take them effectively. So basically, I put all the notes in a book with some fill in the blanks and some special spaces so that you're prompted to make a note of this, questions so that you're prompted to write down what you're experiencing at this conference so that you can take it home with you. Because like I didn't finish my story, but a year and a half in, I thought I was completely incompetent. I was messing up. My kids weren't learning enough. And of course, it's all about comparison, which it shouldn't be. That's another problem, that we have from our schools. And so I was comparing myself to an ideal that I had in my head even. And I can go into that a little bit further, but in any case, I put him back in school. And that was, of course, the worst thing. And so I don't want that to happen to other people. I want people to understand, no, you're doing a good job if you're answering these other fundamental questions that the school never, ever even approaches asking.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure. So we started off with Homer asking this question, what the heck is the playbook? Which excellent question for this particular event. And I'll take other questions if anybody else has any other questions. Just unmute yourself and fight. William.
Yes. Are you going to be covering stuff like, because I've read a couple things where, to graduate, you have to have so many credits, there's so many units. And sometimes it's better to grade your kids with letter grades yourself. Sometimes it's better to count how many hours they were in school or homeschool, self-learning.
Where are you, by the way?
A better way to go. And
where are you? What state are you in?
California.
Okay. I hate to say this, but you're lucky.
That does sound pretty odd.
Because if it unless it's changed in the past 3 years, the requirements in California are very simple. You file your
The letter.
private school affidavit.
Right.
You don't have to go through any kind of charter. You don't need to do any special testing. All you need to do is file at the beginning of the year your private school affidavit, and then make sure you keep attendance. Literally, that's it. So California is very, very simple that way. In the conference, I will be talking about career and college, because schools say to us that the goal of the school is college prep and career readiness. And if you've watched any of my videos, I typically, I go into this. It's not college prep. That much is evident because kids are, it's not career readiness because kids are graduating without careers, right? So college prep is what? It's a Ponzi scheme. It's to convince you to go spend a lot of money on college. And by the way, there are very, very, very few, maybe 3 colleges in the United States. Maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe 10 that are at all worth their salt. And it only depends. It depends very much on what the child is studying. And it also depends on the viewpoint of the child, because our education system is so far off the rails that they've completely infantilized our youth, which is partly why kids are graduating from college without careers, but with a lot of knowledge of, Middle Eastern basket weaving and gender studies or what have you, which is not anywhere near a marketable qualification, right? So You don't need to graduate high school to go to college, and you don't need to graduate college to go to an upper level school. But everybody thinks you do, because that's the assumption, because it's more money for colleges and for higher levels of higher institutions. If they can convince you that you have to go to college and you have to do these things to get there, but you don't. Typically, children who are in high school are already applying to college, right? And they're accepted before they get their GED or their diploma, which is how I got into college, right? And yeah, I was an advanced student and I did well in school, but I took my senior year and I studied abroad, which did not contribute to my diploma one bit. So I never got my diploma, but I went to college and I went to a good school. So my point is, do whatever record keeping for your student that you feel, and there you can go online. There are tutorials for how to make a transcript. I actually never kept, I shouldn't admit this, I never kept records. I never kept grades. I kept a list of the courses that we did, but I knew where to go to find it if I needed it. And the grades, they were in my head. I knew how well my student had performed, right? And then my student, my first, decided that he didn't want to go to college. He came to me one day. He said, "Mom, I've decided I want to go to Liberty University." I said, "That's great." He was 15. I said, "What do you want to study?" He said, "Well, I want to be an actor." And I said, "Darling, you don't need to go to college to be an actor." And he said, "Oh." And so he decided not to go to college. And then he got a little bit irate and he said, "Why would they try to convince us that we have to borrow money to go to learn enough to get a job that pays enough to pay them back? Mom, that's like indentured servitude." And I said, "Now you're getting it." We are very quickly entering a what would you call it? A post-college era, because a college degree is almost meaningless now for two reasons. One, everybody has one. And two, they don't mean anything because you can study such crap in college that you don't learn anything. By the way, most colleges, the first year of college is high school year 5. Or let's say high school junior and senior year combined, because the high schools aren't educating the kids. There was a young woman who graduated at the top of her class. She was valedictorian at a Detroit high school, and she went to college. I think it was University of Michigan, and they had to put her in remedial math. And she was incensed because she graduated at the top of her class. She didn't know math, and nobody told her that she didn't know math. It's an outrage. I mean, it breaks my heart, frankly, because we are in the business of not educating children and telling them that they're educated. So that is what I have to say about record keeping. If you don't keep records for 4 years and you make it all up, when your child is applying to college, so be it. If they're homeschooled, that's actually a mark of accreditation for them. Harvard and Princeton and Stanford are all out there recruiting home educated kids because they've started to recognize that those are the kids who think outside the box because they didn't grow up inside a box. And the only reason that we're still on the bandwagon of, oh, my kid has to go to college is because we went to school. We were all schooled, not educated. So that's part of it. Did that answer your question, William?
Yeah, pretty well. I mean, I kind of looked up some of that stuff online. I find it interesting that you mentioned all those about being in the box, and all those universities you just mentioned nowadays seem to want you in the box.
Yeah.
They're all
I will say that part of the cynic in me wants the cynic in me knows that they want the home educated kids because they want to put them in a box. They want to stuff them back in a box and force them to think a certain way. But that's the cynic in me. And I tell that person, that little cynic, to shut up. They can't be that. They can't be that evil. Can they? I don't know. Next question, anybody?
I have a question, Sam. I don't know, this isn't so much, it is about the playbook, but it's about, do you think we can get enough politicians to get us to write something for the taxes that would support, I mean, they always talk about this, right? Where the money should follow the child and, but yet in Michigan, you pay all this tax money for the kids to literally, this is what they're doing in Michigan, guys. They are letting the kids pretend like they're cats and go to the bathroom in the hallway in a kitty litter box. You heard me right. And this is
Yes.
going on across the country. And so now my kid's been in a private school her whole life, a private Christian school, because I couldn't do this to her, and she is going to Liberty and she's going to be home with me. But I still think about, okay, who's she going to marry? I mean, they're hiding their gender, right?
Yeah.
We don't even know if she's going to marry somebody who's really a boy. I mean, there's some crazy things. But my question is, do you think the legislators, because I'm pushing them big time, if we can actually get it done where that tax money will follow the kids so we can fund our own education, our own private school, our own whatever, we can have more funding for homeschool and co-ops with parents. I know that we're going to be there, Sam. Like what you see, I think is visionary. I just think it's hard, like you said, because we're all in boxes. Like I have a doctorate degree and I don't think I can teach my kid. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
seriously.
And I studied biomedical engineering, but I thought, well, but on the education front, I'm an idiot. I can't possibly teach my child. And that's why I'm trying to show parents that it's not, you are not the child's teacher more than what you've already done, in the sense of you showed them how to tie their shoes, you showed them how to use a knife. Hopefully you've shown your kids how to use a knife and fork. I'm constantly appalled by the number of people who don't know how to use cutlery. But hopefully you've taught your kid a thing or two. And then I went to self-teaching because my daughter taught me that she herself became self-taught under my tutelage, right? So I was working on the math and the reading with her and just trying to get her to learn the stuff that I thought was important. But I gave her the freedom to pursue the drawing and the arts, the painting and stuff that she wanted to do. And she's just tremendously gifted with painting. And so when I realized that she was an artist, I started asking people, how do I teach an artist? How do I teach an artist? Because I felt incompetent again, right? How do I teach an artist? And
Right.
somebody said, well, artists probably should know human anatomy. So I thought, oh, great. I'll find her an art teacher. I'll find her an anatomy teacher, because she didn't want an art teacher. She specifically didn't. She took an art class for a little while and she's like, this does not serve me at all. And so I ran up to her room. I think she was 11 or 12. And I said, how about an anatomy class? Because then I'm doing my job. I put her in a class and I did my job, right? Because I grew up in the system, just like
Right.
we all did. And she's so cute. She pulls out her sketchbook. She goes, oh, Mom, like, you poor thing. And she pulls out her sketchbook and she shows me a double-page spread of the drawings of the interior workings of the human knee. Like, she'd already been teaching herself. And that's the beauty that we have right now. We have the internet. We have access to everything. Abe Lincoln was self-taught. He was a lawyer. He was self-taught. He became the president of the United States. He was self-taught. And he was self-taught. He had to walk to some friend's house to get a book to bring back to read by firelight, to teach himself. Like, it's so easy for us, and we're making it so complicated because the educators have come in and the educators have told us, you listen to us, we know what we're doing, but they don't know what they're doing. And so it's very clear that they don't know what they're doing now, which means, because that is the because what we're seeing now is the direct offshoot development directly from what came before, who they taught. They taught these are the new educators that came through that system. That system it was made by the other educators that went through, like, so the entire thing is perverted. Yes, the entire education system is perverted and was perverted, because in order to get here, it was already perverted. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
So everything that we think we know about education came from a perverted source. So that doesn't mean that everything we think about education is wrong, because a broken clock is right twice a day. But we have to go from the standpoint of everything that you were told from somebody who lies. So you have to impeach everything that you got from that source and test it. Does it make sense? Does it hold true? You have to test it. And it's I get it. It's a very difficult, I'm still working on me. Like, I've only gotten as far as I've gotten. Every year is like one more layer. But I'm hoping that I can get you in at the conference, that I can move you along faster than it took me to move along, right? I mean, I dropped my kid off at school again, right? A year and a half into home education. I had forced him to do 2 lessons of reading every day over Christmas break, which, I mean, it was kind of fun, but I over Christmas break on our vacation in Hawaii, I made the kid do 2 lessons of reading with me, 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening, because he was so bad. He was in 2nd grade. He was so bad at reading. And then a few months later, I dropped him off at this little Christian school because I was such a failure. And she tested him. And before she took him to test him, I said, listen, he's really good in math. I know that. He's exceptional. He's gifted in math. He loves it. Reading is not his strong suit. I did the best I could. I'm sorry. So she took him and she tested him, and she came back and she said, well, you're right. He's very good in math. He's actually a 4th grade level in math. So good for you, Mom. But he's testing at a 5th grade reading level. And I literally said to her, so I'm the one with the problem? And it still took a decade for that understand. Yes, I'm the one with the problem because I went through the system that told me that I'm incapable and that I can't teach reading and that I should have these ridiculous, aspirations for my child, which clearly they were ridiculous. He was reading at a 5th grade level. Now, that's not to say that 5th grade level is anything to write home about, but he was only in 2nd grade. So it is my problem, you see? And so I'm just saying, basically, I'm sure we all have that problem, because I can't be the only person out there who thinks that I'm ineffective, because I know that it's rampant through the homeschool community. We think that we're ineffective. We think that we can't get, we think that because of the school, because we were taught we can't do it. Why were we taught that we can't do the job security? Job security. Where are you going to put your kids? Like that's why I'm so excited about this, because part of it is, so I won't put my kids in that perverted, nasty child abuse system of child abuse, which the school is now, right? What am I going to do? Who says you have to do anything? Who says you have to, quote unquote, educate your child? They do. Now, I am not saying don't educate your child. I'm just saying the only reason you're going, well, what am I going to do now? Is because they told you better educate that kid, and that kid better go to college, or he's going to be a loser for the rest of his life. And I'll tell you something, that's a lie. Just that is a lie, but we have bought it hook, line, and sinker because we all went to school. For 12 years, that's the message that they told us.
Right. And to your point, like some of the wealthiest people out here. Not that they're people we admire in the Christian community, but like Jobs and Elon and all these guys, Gates, they're all college dropouts, all of them, every
Yes.
single one of them.
And by the
so,
way,
Yeah.
we need to also sort of remove this aura of Harvard. I mean, Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard, right?
yep,
But he did not invent Microsoft in his garage. He actually took it from someone else and marketed it better. And
Exactly.
he had a bunch of money because his dad was a very wealthy guy.
Right.
So he's just Bill Gates. He's not like some, and some of them are like, I think Elon Musk has done amazing things and he's an outside the box thinker. But he also says that he doesn't credit his college experience, and he graduated. He doesn't credit his college experience with anything, for any of his achievements, really.
Exactly. I know.
And if you look at the founders and in the playbook, I put a list of all of the exceptionally successful, and the way that society today determines success is just money. Okay. But I put all of the successful people, or a list of, a ton of the successful people who never went to college or never graduated college, or, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
to give us an idea that just because and by the way, their definition of success is not necessarily our definition of success. It only is our definition of success because they told us this is how you define success. College prep and career readiness. That's how you define success. And by the way, that means it all boils down to money. So Dr. Dawn, to answer your question about the money follows the child, I'm a bit agnostic about the money follows the child. I think that it could be great, and I think that it also can be rife with problems. I know in Oregon, there's a gal out there, a group they've drafted a bill where basically it's like money it's like an ESA.
Okay.
So that the parent actually simply controls the money. And
like the
that's
house savings account.
Yes.
Like the house okay.
Education savings account is an
Okay.
ESA.
Yep.
That is also problematic.
Okay.
What we need two things. We need the federal government to butt out of education. And then
100%. Yeah.
we need the states to butt out of education. And the only way that we're going to do that is to stop taxing people for education and remove the money. Once you remove the money, yes, it becomes a parent issue. But then you have the opportunity for charitable organizations and for the free market to take over. And then it's like, well, the better supplier wins. The better supplier will get the students. The minute that you pass the money through the government, it becomes tainted. And I just don't, personally, I don't see the avenue for success. Now, interim, it's an interesting plan. I know a guy, Corey DeAngelis, who's very big on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I follow him, and he's got great ideas about it. And I think that it's potentially an interesting interim, but because the money goes through the government, we lose control of it. And then the government, and that means that we give control to the government, which means the government is still controlling. And when the government, and the real problem that we have is that government and education should be mutually exclusive, because we are a nation founded upon the ideal that the public controls, that the public has the power. And as long as, and this is why we're seeing this move towards socialism in our nation and in our schools, is because once the government figures out that they can convince you to vote them into power, they're teaching us. They're teaching us that government has the answers. They're teaching in our schools that we should rely on the government. They are teaching us trust the experts, and then we do. And it shouldn't surprise us that that's how that's happening, So it's just a very dangerous thing. So I can't like throw my hat in for the money follows the child, but I also don't speak out against it, because it has its value. but it's a short-lived value in my estimation.
I think that's a great point, and I prefer what you said, but I think that would be much more harder to achieve through the legislature than what I'm talking about. But I would definitely love to skip right to what you're saying, because everything you're saying is correct. I wouldn't know how to get there.
Yeah, and you won't find a politician to do it. But if we
Right.
can, but if we can, here's the thing. The inner cities are the worst sufferers because their schools are literally prison factories. They just have a pipeline to prison. And if you go into the schools in the inner city, and many schools that are not in the inner city, they look like prisons. They're actually designed like prison. There are parallels. There's a library in the prison, there's a library in school, and you can check books out in both. And there's barbed wire and there's barbed wire, both of them, right? And there's a metal detector. Well, there's a metal detector in the prison going in and out. It's just that the prisoners stay overnight. The kids in school don't. Those kids it's almost that they're doomed. It's a wonder that we still have a free thinking population after all of these decades. It's a wonder. And it's a testimony to the inherited morality that the inherited moral capital, I should say, that we're spending. We're just spending like drunken sailors right now, that we need to recapture, or we will simply, raise our hands and submit. So there may be an opportunity, because there may be an uprising in the inner city of moms that say, no, now you've gone too far. You're not going to teach my child that. Maybe we'll see.
Sam, we've got a question from Michael Ibarra, who is on a computer without the ability to talk. His question is, how do you structure home learning? Are there any benchmarks for grades? Having a hard time overcoming the idea of school in my head. And he is in California also, and understands what you said about the requirements, but he wants to make sure his kids are equipped and they know what they need to do. So he says he is admittedly OCD, and he's the one who needs the structure for his sanity. So
right, which makes
that's
perfect
a really
sense.
good point, is the difference between the parents' needs, right, and the kids' needs.
Yeah, and you have to decide what hill it's worth dying on, right? You have to decide. The first thing that I say to parents who say, well, what about the structure and grading, and how do you, making it, because they want it to look like school, because they were taught to check boxes. We were all taught to check the boxes. So the first thing that I want to ask people to do is take a step back and picture your child as an adult and understand what you want to see. Do you want to see them in a 3-piece suit in the corner office at Goldman Sachs in New York City? Is that the ideal? Because that's the school's ideal. That's the ideal that the school is shooting for. Or do you want them to be happy, productive, giving, loving, nurturing, like the other things that the school never takes into account? And that should recalibrate a little bit. And you need to maybe make a little sign for yourself. My job is to raise an individual, not to raise a computer chip or something along those lines, right? And then you have to work within your comfort zone, because I would have struggled to grasp all of this in my first or second year, clearly, right? So you work within your comfort zone. So if I worked off of a schedule. In fact, I put my schedule, I think I put it in the playbook, or it's available. It'll be available online.
Yeah, it's in the playbook.
The kids had a schedule. They had check marks that they had to do. And then what happens is, as you go down, so I did Shirley grammar. I love Shirley. It's a great way to teach English grammar. Everybody goes, why do you teach English grammar? But the fact is, you teach English grammar because children need to understand that there is order in the universe. And some of that order is in our language, which seems counterintuitive because we just learn our language by speaking it and hearing it, and then we learn to read. But there's order. And I think it's very important that children understand that there's order and there's a pattern, and that's very important. So anyway, Shirley Grammar had the whole grammar thing. And then my understanding is when they went to the publisher said, well, yeah, you need a writing component. You can't market this just as a grammar component. You need a writing component. So they they sort of overlaid in a writing component. So the kid writes every week. So my firstborn wrote every single week because I dotted every I and crossed every T, and I did every lesson. And by the way, when I put the kids in the little private Christian school, they also did Shirley Grammar, which was a source of comfort for me. But they didn't do the entire lesson. They didn't do every lesson every day. And I was like, why aren't they doing everything? They're not doing everything. They're going to miss something. No, you don't miss things because there's repetition built in, and people only learn when they are ready to learn. That's why I did the playbook. So you could go home and review and go, oh my gosh, I didn't really understand that then, but now I see it. Because we don't learn necessarily on Wednesday the lesson on fractions that we get on Wednesday. And so you'll start by, you check all the boxes, right? Then my second child, he wrote every other week. And my third child, like every other week, maybe every third week. I took the gloves off. I took the guardrails off a little bit. And I said, okay, we can ease up a little bit and have a little bit of leniency and have more fun with it. Because let's see. So my daughter, my youngest, is a little bit prone to anxiety. She holds a very high bar for herself, and she never feels that she lives up to it. Anxiety shuts down learning. Do we ever take that into account in our school system? No. It literally shuts down learning. Fear inhibits thought. So think about that. So don't yell at your kids, learn it now, get it done. You know what I mean? That's counterproductive. And so you need to sort of revamp your approach. And if you want to do testing so that you can gauge where the child is vis-a-vis other children or other grade levels or what have you, you can do that. I think I would encourage you to have a little bit more faith in that every child is born curious. And if you stoke the curiosity and you feed it, and you make demands on the child. You say, well, I want you to write an essay about that. Make sure you get it done today. Yeah. You make demands of the child. Absolutely. Some people don't, by the way. I'm still not there. Although I'm opening my eyes to that approach also, because I hated writing. I thought writing was stupid. And now I'm a writer. Professionally, I'm a writer, and I love writing. And so it took me until 10 years after college to start writing. And now I can't stop. Do you see what I'm saying? So everything has its time. And the school messes with that. Do you know, they gave a creativity test. There's this guy, Dr. George Frank, I think is his name. He gave a creativity test because he was looking for the most creative people, because he was tasked with finding a team that could get us to the moon. And he's like, well, the number one thing I need is creatives, because we've never been there. So they're not just redoing something that's already been done. So he gave the creativity test to all of these PhDs. And at the same time, he got curious. So he gave it to 1,600 5-year-olds. The 5-year-olds scored a 98% on the creativity exam. The PhDs scored 2%. The 5-year-olds he tested them 5 years later at 10 and at 15. At 10, they scored 32%, and at 15, they were down to 12. School kills creativity because it puts everything inside these guide rails and it forces math at 4:15 or not 10:15 in the morning. Now it's time to do math. And maybe just as the child is understanding a concept, okay, put the math books away. It's time to do reading. But I was just getting, nope, that's for tomorrow. Well, you know how it is when you're working on something that's taking some brain power, right? And you get distracted. The dog starts chasing a squirrel outside or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Or there's a squirrel outside and you get distracted, right? And it messes everything up. And then you're like, oh, crud, I've got to go back and think 5 steps before to figure out where I was going with this. I was going somewhere, but I'm not sure where or what have you. So my advice for the grades and the testing is do as little as you can sleep at night, basically, because I know you're going to do too much. You sound like my husband. He had his knee operated. The doctor said you should do some leg lifts, maybe 20, and just to keep the leg moving a little bit, just do 20. So I went out and I came back in and he said, I did my leg lifts. I said, how many? He said, 250. Okay. Just so we got everything right. So understand that you're coming from a paradigm where you need the boxes checked and you need evidence. And you should want a little bit of evidence, but I want you to look for evidence in the places that you're not expecting to find it. It's more poetic than we are led to believe from an institution that seeks to institutionalize and conform us. There's more poetry involved. Yeah. I haven't said that way before, but I really believe that. There's more poetry in learning and in education than we are led to believe. Next question. I think I saw somebody's hand up, but it's down now.
Actually, there was one more thing.
Oh, you know what?
Michael
I don't even have the chat open. That's my bad. Okay, Michael answered, I think structure has its good points. Work as an adult takes diligence and structure, some form of self-discipline, which I think the structure of school times and such helps instill that. Well, it instills a prison mentality too. I'm unable to get to the conference. Where do we get the playbook? So I'm going to have to answer that question at a later date because the playbook goes with the conference, but I'm hoping to be able to offer the conference in some capacity online in conjunction with the playbook. It's true, the school structure may help teach the child some form of time management, but judging from the results, I would have to argue that it doesn't. Because what we're seeing today is employer after employer saying, I'm not hiring college graduates because they don't know how to behave at work. So your argument is it's teaching them how to be sort of workers and be on a schedule or something. But evidence is showing that employers are actually happier to hire. And by the way, the employers don't want to unteach what the colleges have taught. They're not allowed to hire younger kids than high school. So they're forced into this paradigm where they're hiring either right out of high school, or maybe they're getting the kid before he graduates high school for a few hours to see if he can train the child to do whatever the work is. But they are looking for people who think outside the box. And so when you institutionalize a child and you're saying, but I'm making him conform to a schedule, that's a good thing. My argument is make him conform to the schedule when he has to conform to a schedule. I don't see any reason to pre-expose the child to a schedule that to an arbitrary schedule, right? So if you read up on the literature about sleep habits, our children are underslept. They're struggling because they have to get up way too early for school. teenagers in particular sleep in the morning because their body rhythms don't conform to day and night. They conform more to nighttime. That's just a sort of a natural effect of being a teen. And then when you get older, you're like, oh my gosh, how could I have ever stayed up till midnight every night? That's like impossible for me now, that kind of a thing. And so, but we just disregard that because it serves the schools to take the kids during working hours so that every parent can work. When you understand the genesis of the school schedule, you start to question the motives. So trying to piecemeal back in the idea of, oh, but the school means to teach the child this thing about structure and scheduling. I discount that. And then my point is, okay, so keep your kids on a little bit of a structure. I did. There's nothing wrong with that. But I started at 9 o'clock in the morning because I recognized we didn't have to get up at 7:30. And I insisted that my young children be finished with breakfast and ready to start the day at 9, because that's when I was ready to start the day. And I wanted to get the day underway so that I could get my work done. So serve yourself and your children simultaneously. Now I wake my kids up every morning at 8 because I'm mean that way, and they should get up. And sometimes it's more difficult than others. And it's literally like every day. Like sometimes I let them sleep till 9 on Saturdays because I like my alone time also, like make the thing that we miss, the big nut that we completely miss. And I've written an article about this called The Greatest Heist in History, is that the schools rob the parents of their relationship with their children and rob the children of their relationship with their parents. And they make the parents accomplices in the theft. So while you're embarking on this idea of home education, also bring in this idea of family bonding, because that shouldn't be missed. School shouldn't be 8 hours a day. I'm sorry, no way, not for younger kids. And for older kids, they like to read at night. Okay, so they can do some of their schoolwork at night, or, work to incentivize your kids so that they're hitting the marks that you set for them, but also be a little bit relaxed about the marks that you set for them, because you want them to find their innate giftings and their innate creativity, and you want to stoke their passions so that they can serve themselves later. I think one of the big problems that we have is it for a long time, you would graduate college, you'd get your job, you'd work there for 50 years, you'd retire with a gold watch. And there were a lot of men going through midlife crises, right? I mean, that was like a thing, midlife crisis. This is a new theory that I just developed, and I'm sort of trying it out on people. So you can give me answers in the chat. I think that when you send a child into an institution that actually denies it, the institution denies the existence of spiritual anything, denies all existence of spiritual. And most of the United States believes that there's something beyond. You can call it whatever you want. Some people call it God. Some people don't. That's fine. Or karma, whatever. Most people believe there's something. We can't know, maybe, or whatever. When you didn't, and by the way, even in the pagan world, even in ancient times, most people believed there's something. There's just a something we don't know. When you deny that and you raise people to believe that their value is tied intrinsically and only to their earning potential, at a certain point, and then you remove the family. So they grew up, and I'm talking about in particular men, but I think women too will also experience this. They grow up, They do all the things that they've been taught to do. They check all the boxes, they graduate, they get a job, they work, they have kids, because that's the thing, right? We have a family. Okay, good. So you're checking that box. You send the kids to school, so you never see them, or you barely see them. And then at some point you go, oh my God, is this what it's all about? What have I done with my life? Is that all there is? And you've reached an age where you're probably not going to go back and go, I need some religion. I need to find purpose for my life. But you are going to maybe trade your wife in for a newer model, or trade your car in for a newer model, or something along those lines. I think that is the genesis, to a large degree, maybe not entirely, of the quote unquote midlife crisis. And the reason is because I went through it when I was 20. Because I arrived when I was 20, I was very successful. I was making a ton of money. And I had given myself an ulcer going to college, trying to figure out how I was going to, my mother was a single mom with no college degree. So I was raised, get an education, get a career, then maybe get married, have kids. I knew in my heart I wanted to get married and have kids, but I was on the path, man. I was getting a career and getting money. I had to get money. And how was I going to do that? And so I just went through all these conniptions. And at 20, I was very successful and I had a lot of money. And I just went, oh my gosh, I did it. Stick a fork in me. I'm done. And then I went, wait, this is it? This is all there is? So I went on a search for meaning. And I was young, so I could figure it out, luckily. But a lot of us don't. And those lessons in school, that there exists no spirituality, that any spirituality is ridiculous. That is a lesson that's learned. And it's difficult to, we see it's difficult to walk away from anything that we've been taught for 12 years. 12 years. More time than the time that we spend with our parents, I would argue. We spend in school. I.e. essay about, okay, Michael wrote, when you said, okay, that it makes more sense, still requiring something of the child. Yeah. By the way, like, who's the greatest neurosurgeon we have in the United States? I think it's still Dr. What's his name? He
Ben Carson.
Yeah, Ben Carson, right? Ben Carson grew up on the wrong side. He was poor. His mother couldn't read. And she insisted that her children go to the library, get a book out, and write an essay every week for her. She couldn't read. So your level of education is inconsequential if you desire the education of your child. Last question. Out of corporate America for almost 3 years now, and I still struggle with tying my value to my income versus lack thereof, with being a stay-at-home mom. Woohoo! I am hungry to teach my children that there are alternatives that also resemble success and ultimately lead to a happy and fulfilling life. I had this conversation with my daughter the other day. We do an exercise in our homeschool that is called Cost of Living Project, and the kids in 10th grade decide where they will be 5 years, say 5 years out of college, say somewhere in there, 25, where they will be, what they will be doing, how much they'll be earning, where they will live, how much it will cost, what kind of car, like the cost of living, like, and I encouraged my daughter. I said, you want to be a starving artist, so do your cost of living and pretend you're a secretary, because you'd probably be a pretty good secretary or receptionist or something like that would be a job that you could hold down. And she started doing that. And then she found that really boring because she had no money. So she made herself a YouTube sensation. But in any case, at least she saw. But my point is, said to her, you know, there's nothing wrong with aspiring to be a mother. I'm sorry. I have to put that out there. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, you have to have a plan because our culture doesn't support that. And so you might have a difficult time if you don't marry well and stay married or stay married, right? To be a stay-at-home mom. But I just actually, and I'm hoping she's coming to the conference. I just spent some time with a gal who was a single mom with 2 kids under the age of 3. I'm pretty sure 3 or 4. They were very young when her husband just up and walked out. And she raised them and they didn't go to school. And she just figured out how to get it done. So she said at one point she was running a store and she had rented a loft in the building upstairs. And that's where her kids hung out and did their schoolwork. And then she would go up on breaks or for lunch to sort of check in with them. So, and she did that. And then she's still single, right? This whole time. And then she adopted 2 girls and raised them and home educated them. And I guarantee you she was checking boxes. She wasn't an unschooler. And I met one of her daughters and she's lovely. She's in college now. Her daughters are all very successful. One of them's actually a missionary in, I think it's Uganda. There are so many ways to crack the nut, to get it done. And we have to stop assuming that what we learned was education is actually education. That really is the sort of summary statement. And that's why the tagline for this whole thing is educate differently. Just differently. Like, as long as you're not doing what the schools are doing, you're on the right track. I mean, it's really that bad now. I'm sorry to say it. So well, I'm assuming that everybody has joined the community here, but if you haven't, please join the community. It's free. And then you can go, and I will be posting this, I'll be posting the recording so you can refer people to it for free, cost nothing. Cause I want this message to get out. Chicky is always telling me I'm giving it away for free too much, but that's life. I really want, I want to empower parents. You've been robbed. You've been robbed of your parents. Don't do that to your children. Oh, that's another good one. I should write that one down. My wife grew up always thinking she wanted to be a career woman, either an attorney or a doctor. I met her partway through her college experience. We got married and we had our first baby. She was 24. She's repeatedly told me and most of her friends that she has never felt more fulfilled than being a mother. Coming from her, she was extremely set on being and having a well-paying career. And just to add the spiritual element, I forsook my career because my husband to be was very ill. So I walked away from my career, and I was a career woman. Like, I had understood that was how to get it done, and I got it done, and I was there, and my career was going further up. Like, I was still on the path. And I walked away because I was hit with a binary choice, and I recognized that was my choice, and I chose him. Great. Years later, I had 3 kids, and I was going to go back to my career, and my child insisted that I quit. So I did, in so many words. So I did, because I recognized again, oh, look at this. It's a binary choice. And then years later, my career was redeemed. I wrote and produced and starred in a major motion picture out of nowhere. Little old me. And so it's not that your education becomes useless. It's your education becomes useful in perhaps a different way than what they told you it would be. And you believed them. But you're better than that. You're better than what they told you were. So I think we can end there. I want to thank everybody for coming. Chicky, thank you for helping. And thank you so much for your questions. This was cathartic for me. Now I don't have to see my psychiatrist later. Look at all the money I just saved. Kidding. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you later.